All right, ready to dive in. Today we're jumping into game development
Yeah.
using these two amazing tools. And get this, they're free.
Free is always good.
Right. Blender and Unity.
Nice.
We've got some excerpts here from the book Building a Game with Unity and Blender that you guys sent over.
Love this book.
Yeah, and we're going to break it down and see what this game creation thing is all about.
Yeah, we're going to get granular.
Granular is good.
Oh, yeah, in the best way
I
possible.
like it.
Talking code, we're talking textures.
Oh, yeah.
Even breaking down, like, the right shade of green for that dungeon moss.
So it's like we're getting a backstage pass to a game studio, but way less intimidating.
Way less intimidating.
Nobody's yelling at us.
No.
We're just here to have fun and learn.
Exactly. And, this book really emphasizes that accessibility.
Okay.
Like, anyone can do this.
Right.
You don't need a massive budget or a giant team.
Okay.
You can do it.
You're saying anybody at home can do this?
Absolutely.
I love it.
You have an idea.
Yeah.
We can make it happen.
So before we even open up these programs, Blender, Unity, this book talks about defining the core concept of your game.
Foundational.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like you're sketching out your masterpiece before you even start painting.
Absolutely. And it starts with, honestly, like understanding the roles in game development.
Okay.
Because you have so many different things.
Right.
You've got your game designer.
Okay.
The mastermind behind kind of the mechanics, the feel, the whole experience.
So they're like the architect of the game world.
Exactly. Laying it all out.
Okay.
And then you have your artist.
Right.
Or an animator, if you're talking about bringing things to life.
Right.
Who's really making it visually pop.
Right. Like making it look cool.
Yeah. Crafting that terrifying monster.
Yes.
Or that really charming hero,
It all comes down to the visuals.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't forget the audio engineer.
Oh, so crucial.
Right, because what good is a game without sound?
Yeah, because they're setting the mood with the music.
Right.
The sound effects, the ambiance, it's really what sucks you into that world.
Like, can you imagine playing, I don't know, your favorite game?
I can't.
With no music, no sound effects.
It would be so different.
It would be a different game.
Right.
And then, of course, you've got to have your programmers.
Yeah.
The people who make it all work.
The wizards.
Yes, the wizards behind the curtain.
They make the magic happen.
Taking all these grand ideas and putting them into something that's playable.
Yes. They're the architects of the game's soul.
I like it, the soul.
Yeah.
So this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Genre.
Okay.
Locking in that genre early on.
Yes.
Why is that so crucial?
Well, picture this.
Okay.
You're building a racing game.
Okay.
You're in it to win it.
Okay.
And then halfway through, you're like, you know what? I think this should be a puzzle game.
Oh, no.
Right. You're hitting the reset button.
Yeah, it's not good.
That's why nailing down your genre early is so crucial.
That sense.
Because it influences everything.
Right.
Art style, the coding challenges you're going to face, even like the feeling of the games.
Totally.
It all stems from that core genre.
Okay, so we've got our genre locked in.
Yes.
Now we've got to figure out how this game actually plays gameplay mechanics.
Yes, the nuts and bolts of how players interact with your world.
Okay.
What actions can they take? What are the challenges? How do they move? How do they interact?
Right.
It's all about that interaction.
Right, and this book breaks it down into 3 things. Level design, rapid prototyping, and testing.
3 pillars.
Okay, let's start with level design.
Okay.
Because it's more than just pretty backgrounds, right?
It's so much more.
Right.
Strategic.
It's like you're guiding the player through an experience.
Exactly. It enhances the gameplay.
Right.
And it can even tell a story without any words.
I never even thought about that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you can tell a story just by the way you design the levels?
Think about games like Journey.
Oh, okay.
Barely any dialogue.
Right.
But the environments tell a powerful story.
Wow.
All on their own.
That's amazing. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so then rapid prototyping.
The fun part.
This one's interesting because it sounds like, especially for somebody just starting out,
Yes.
it's like building the bones of the game before you even get into all the fancy graphics.
You got it, because you can get really bogged down in the details.
Oh, for sure.
Right. But with rapid prototyping, you're using simple shapes,
Okay.
basic cubes even, to test your mechanics.
Oh, wow.
See if it's fun.
So it's all about what, just like quick experimentation?
Exactly.
So if something's not working, you can adjust it.
You iterate quickly.
Right, and you're not like spending hours and hours making something look beautiful.
Exactly.
That might not even make it into the final game.
You're not marrying an idea too early.
Right, which I feel like I would do.
It's easy to fall in love,
Yeah.
but rapid prototyping, it saves you from heartache.
I like it.
Right.
Okay. And then, of course, the most important thing, testing.
Always testing?
But not necessarily the most glamorous.
Not always the most glamorous, but it's so crucial.
Yeah.
Because even the most seasoned developers, they're testing their games constantly.
Right.
Nobody makes a perfect game on the first try.
Right.
It takes tweaking, refining, getting feedback.
And being willing to adjust.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because sometimes what you think is going to be amazing,
right.
players might be like, this is not it.
Right, totally.
And you have to be open to that feedback.
So testing is all about, what, making sure those mechanics feel right?
It's about making sure the game is fun.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Right. Nobody wants to play a game that's not fun.
Exactly. Nobody.
Unless you're getting paid to test it, then it's your job.
Yeah. That's true. That's a different story.
All right, so speaking of feeling, right?
Okay.
What about the game story?
Oh, the narrative.
Right, because even if a game, I know some games are like action-packed, but even those can have a story.
Absolutely, and I think it's important to remember that you can have a gripping story even if your game doesn't have any dialogue.
Okay.
It's about building a world with history, with intrigue.
Right.
Maybe your characters have these unspoken motivations.
Right.
It's all about drawing the player in.
So you're saying that even without dialogue,
Yeah.
there can still be a narrative.
Absolutely.
That's interesting.
Think about it like environmental storytelling.
Okay.
You're dropping breadcrumbs, but the player is piecing together the story through their experience in the world.
Wow, that's really cool. I like that.
Right.
Okay, so we've got our game world.
Yes.
Let's put some characters in it.
Populate it.
Right. Time to unleash those artistic skills.
Or at least appreciate those who have them.
That is very true, because I am not a good artist.
We can't all be good at everything,
That's right.
but luckily there are people who are,
Right.
and they make these amazing characters.
Yeah, so this book talks about starting with silhouettes.
Silhouettes, such a powerful tool, because it's all about that first impression.
Right, so before you even get to the details, you're just focused on that shape.
Exactly, capturing the essence of the character
I like it.
with just its shadow.
So it's like, what, nailing down the personality in that shadow before you even get to, like, you know,
The nitty-gritty.
the nitty-gritty.
The color palettes, the textures,
Yeah.
it's all about, like you said, nailing that foundation
Right.
before you build the skyscraper.
Perfect analogy.
That's right.
Now, the book also talks about these scale comparison charts.
Oh, so important.
What's the deal with those?
Well, imagine this.
Oh, okay.
You design this terrifying dragon,
Okay.
right? Huge, wings, fire, everything.
Okay, yeah.
And then you drop it into your game world,
Yeah.
and it's the size of a house cat.
Oh, no.
Not so intimidating anymore.
No, not at all.
Right.
It's adorable now.
Exactly. So the scale comparisons, they're all about consistency.
Right.
Making sure your characters fit seamlessly into the environment.
Right, so everything feels believable. It's sad. You want players to be scared of the dragon, not laughing at it.
Exactly. Unless that's the intention.
Right, unless it's a comedic dragon.
A comedically small dragon.
Okay, so we've got our characters, they're ready to go.
Yes.
But they need a world to inhabit.
They need a place to exist.
Right, so this is where environment design comes in.
Oh, yeah. And not just pretty landscapes.
Yeah.
This is form and function.
Right, so a pretty forest is nice and all.
It's beautiful.
But if you don't know where you're going, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Exactly. If the players get lost or can't figure out where to go, the immersion is broken.
Right.
It's like being dropped into a maze with no exit.
And nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
Unless you're into mazes, I guess.
Some people are.
That's true, that's true.
But in a game, we want a little bit more direction.
Right, so it needs to be functional, too.
Exactly. Form and function hand in hand.
So this book talks about textures.
Oh, yeah. Textures are everything.
And it even says, like, taking real-world photos.
It's a common technique.
Really?
Of
Yeah.
rocks, grass, whatever, to make things look real.
It's all about that realism, and it's easier than you think.
So it's like borrowing from the real world to build this virtual one.
Exactly.
I like it. That's cool.
And you can find these amazing textures online, or even take your own photos.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Get creative with it.
Right. Get out there, get some fresh air,
Exactly.
make some photos of rocks.
Why not?
Why not?
It's research.
And then this brings us to our first powerhouse tool,
Okay, hit me.
Blender.
Blender.
3D graphics software.
Powerful.
Powerful. And it's free.
Did I mention it's free?
Right. We did mention it's free.
Because it's such a game changer.
It is, that it's free.
Like the fact that anyone can just download it and start creating is incredible.
Yeah, and I've seen Blender, I've opened it up.
Okay.
And it can be a little intimidating at first.
It can be a little overwhelming.
It's like buttons everywhere.
It's like, where do I even click first?
Yeah.
Right, but luckily this book does a great job of explaining it all.
Oh, it demystifies Blender. Absolutely.
Right.
Walks you through the essential areas
Okay.
for game dev. So you're not bogged down by features you don't need.
Which is good.
We want to streamline the process.
Right.
Make it accessible.
Okay, so you've created your awesome 3D model, you've animated it in Blender, whatever.
Okay.
Now it's time to bring it into Unity.
Time to make it come alive.
This is our second free tool, the game engine behind so many games.
Unity is a powerhouse.
It is, and it's known for being user-friendly, which is good.
Very user-friendly.
Yeah.
And one of the key things about Unity is this concept of prefabs.
Prefabs.
Okay.
It's going to change your life.
Okay, all right. So explain it to me like I'm 5. What is a prefab?
Imagine you're building a forest.
Okay.
You're going to need a lot of trees.
Right. A lot of trees.
Do you want to make each tree individually?
No, that sounds very tedious.
Very tedious.
And time-consuming. And that's where prefabs come in.
Okay.
You make one perfect tree,
Okay.
all the leaves, the textures, everything.
Okay.
And then you save it as a prefab.
Like
a template, exactly.
So then you can just plop them down as you need them.
You just duplicate it over and over again.
That's amazing. That's genius.
It's a huge time saver.
That makes so much sense.
And it just makes the whole process so much smoother.
Okay, but a forest is more than just trees.
True.
You need lighting.
Lighting is everything.
Right.
It sets the mood.
To set the mood.
It guides the player.
Okay.
It can even, like we said, tell a story.
Oh.
So it's not just about making things bright.
Right.
It's about using light strategically.
So it's like an art form in itself.
Oh, absolutely. It's an art.
Oh, okay. And then Unity can do all that.
Unity can do it all.
Okay.
You can add flowing water. You can create the illusion of lush foliage, even spooky mist, if you want to get spooky.
Oh, spooky.
Right.
That's awesome.
It's all about bringing that world to life.
So we would be remiss if we didn't talk about the coding aspect of this.
The coding, the heart of it all.
Right. It's like trying to bake a cake and not knowing the recipe.
Exactly. You need those ingredients.
Right. You got to have the ingredients. And so Unity uses C#,
C# is the language of choice.
which can be a little intimidating
It can be.
for someone who doesn't know anything about coding.
But it's actually very beginner-friendly.
Okay.
And the book does a great job of breaking it down,
Good.
making it accessible to everyone.
So the book talks about game structure.
The blueprint.
Okay. What is that?
It's like the rules of your game.
Okay.
So what happens when a player hits a button?
Right.
How do enemies behave?
Okay.
How do the levels progress?
Okay. So it dictates kind of how the whole thing flows,
It's the logic
the logic behind it.
that drives the entire experience.
So it's like the behind the scenes stuff that nobody really sees.
The magic behind the curtain.
Right, but it makes everything work. That's cool. And what I thought was really cool is that this book gives actual code examples.
It's not afraid to get into the nitty-gritty.
Right.
It shows you the code, it explains it.
That's awesome.
So you can actually see how it's done.
So, like, we could theoretically write some code to make our character run and jump.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
And battle monsters, collect treasures, you name it.
This is very cool.
The possibilities are endless.
I like it.
That's the beauty of game development.
That is the beauty.
It's limited only by your imagination.
Okay. I'm feeling inspired.
Yeah.
We've only scratched the surface here.
We've got a lot more to dig into.
What else does this book get into?
Well, let's dive deeper into Blender.
Okay.
The book actually walks you through creating a simple monster.
Okay.
Step by step.
So even if you've never used Blender before,
Exactly.
you can follow along.
It starts with those basic shapes, like we talked about,
Right.
building with virtual Legos.
I like it.
So you're not overwhelmed by detail.
But
You're just having fun, experimenting.
It's all about keeping it simple at first.
Exactly. And then you can gradually add more complexity.
Okay, so break down those complex forms into more manageable shapes.
Exactly. For example, you could start with a simple sphere
Okay.
as the base for your monster's body.
Okay.
And then you start adding details.
Okay.
Legs, arms, maybe even some bunny ears.
A monster with bunny ears.
Why not? Got to add a little whimsy.
I like it. I like it.
It's your monster.
It's all about creativity.
Exactly.
Okay, so then the book mentions this process called UV unwrapping.
Ah, yes. UV unwrapping.
And this is where I start to get lost.
It sounds scarier than it is.
Okay.
Think of it like wrapping a present.
Okay.
If you just slap the wrapping paper on haphazardly,
Right, it's going to be a mess.
it's going to be a wrinkled, ripped mess.
Right.
But if you carefully lay out the wrapping paper,
Right.
make sure it covers everything smoothly.
Okay.
That's essentially what UV unwrapping is.
Okay.
You're taking your 3D model,
Yeah.
flattening it out,
Okay.
so you can paint a texture on it without any weird distortions.
So the UV map is basically like a blueprint for
Exactly.
your texture.
It tells the software how to apply that image to your model.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you can get really creative with textures.
I bet.
You can add colors, shadows, bumps,
Oh, wow.
all sorts of cool details.
To make that monster extra creepy.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our monster all textured up.
Looking good?
What about the player's character?
Ah, the hero of our story.
Right, that's got to be more complex, right?
It does involve a bit more detail,
Okay.
but the core process is the same.
Okay.
You start with those basic shapes,
Right.
add details, and then unwrap the UVs for texturing.
Okay, it's like the same steps, just more intricate.
Exactly. You're just working with a more complex form.
Gotcha.
But the book walks you through it all,
Good, good.
showing you how to create a humanoid character with armor, a helmet, even a trusty sword.
Oh, very cool.
You know, all the essentials.
Gotta have that sword.
Gotta have the sword.
Okay, so then it mentions something called seam lines.
Ah, yes. Seam lines.
When it comes to UV unwrapping.
Important detail.
What are those all about?
Okay, imagine you have this cool striped texture
Okay.
that you want to use for your character's shirt.
Okay.
If your seam line, which is basically the line where the texture wraps around,
Okay.
if it's in the wrong place, those stripes might not line up correctly.
Oh, that would look weird.
It would break the illusion.
Right.
You'd be like, wait a minute, those stripes don't match up.
Right, it would be very noticeable.
Exactly.
So it's all about finding those hidden edges
Precisely.
where the texture can just flow.
Seamlessly, without any jarring breaks.
It's out looking weird.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's all about being strategic with those seam lines.
Strategy is key
I like it.
in UV unwrapping and in life.
That's very true. Very true.
Deep thoughts with Blender.
All right, so we've got our textured characters,
Looking
but they're just kind of standing there. Static.
static, yeah.
We need to bring them to life.
We need some movement.
Enter animation.
Oh, yes, here we go.
This is where things get really fun
Okay.
because you get to see your characters come to life.
So how do we do that?
The book dives into character rigging,
Rigging, okay.
which is basically like building a skeleton for your 3D model,
So instead of animating every single point on the model,
which would be insane.
right, it would take forever.
You just move the bones,
Okay.
and the character's skin moves along with it.
That makes so much more sense.
It's all about efficiency.
Right.
Working smarter, not harder.
I like it.
So the book starts with rigging the monster,
Okay.
creating a simple armature, which is Blender's fancy word for skeleton.
Okay, got it.
And then it moves on to the player character,
Okay.
which, being a humanoid, has a more complex armature.
Right, more bones, more joints.
Exactly, to allow for more intricate movement.
Make it look more realistic.
Precisely.
Okay, so then I mentioned something called weight painting. Ah, yes, weight painting.
This sounds interesting.
It's one of those things that sounds way more complicated than it actually is.
Okay, good.
Basically, weight painting is how you control how much influence each bone has on the surrounding area of the model.
So if a bone have a high weight on a certain part of the skin,
Exactly.
that part's going to move more when the bone moves.
You got it.
Okay.
And if the weight is low, that area will barely budge.
Okay, so it's all about creating those realistic deformations.
Exactly.
Like when you bend your arm.
You don't want your character's arm bending in the wrong direction.
Right, that would be bad.
That's where weight painting comes in.
Okay, so we've got our skeleton.
We've got the bones.
How do we actually make it move?
That's where keyframing comes in.
Keyframing. Okay.
This is a fundamental animation technique.
Okay.
Essentially, you create a series of key poses for your character,
Okay.
like snapshots of movement at specific points in time.
Okay, so you're defining the key moments,
Exactly.
and the software fills in the gaps.
Exactly. It's like magic.
That's amazing.
You don't have to animate every single frame.
Thank goodness.
You just set those key poses and let the computer handle the rest.
So it's like giving the computer instructions,
Precisely.
and it just figures it out.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
And the book shows you how to do it all.
Nice.
Different types of movements, even how to apply the 12 basic principles of animation.
12 basic principles. That sounds kind of like animation school.
It's like the secret sauce
Okay.
to making things look amazing.
I like it.
So we're giving you the good stuff here.
Give us all the secrets. All the secrets.
Okay, so our characters are moving and grooving.
They're ready to go.
But they need somewhere to go.
They need a world to explore.
Right. They need their dungeon.
Exactly. And the book dives into creating the game's terrain.
Okay.
Now, here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Even though Unity has its own terrain editor,
Right.
the book actually encourages you to build the terrain manually in Blender.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? Well, it might seem counterintuitive,
Right.
but building it manually gives you so much more control,
Okay.
especially for a game with a more structured, enclosed environment like a dungeon.
Okay, so you have more freedom to shape those levels exactly how you want them.
Exactly. It's all about that creative control.
No compromises.
No compromises.
I like it.
So the book takes you through building the ground, crafting those tunnel walls,
Okay.
adding some dramatic cliffs.
Oh, gotta have those cliffs.
Gotta have the cliffs.
Make it exciting.
Exactly. And even smaller details like stairs and pathways.
So it's all about creating that immersive environment.
Exactly. You want the player to feel like they're really there.
Right, like they could get lost in those tunnels.
Exactly, but in a good way.
Right, a fun way.
The fun, engaging way.
Okay, so we've got the basic layout of our dungeon,
Yes.
but it's a little bland, right?
It needs some texture, some visual interest.
I need some love.
Exactly.
Yeah, so what do we do?
Well, the book shows you how to create amazing walk models using a combination of basic shapes
Okay.
and sculpting techniques
Oh, cool.
to get that realistic, rough texture that rocks have.
I remember it mentioning using real-world photos.
Oh, yeah, that's a great technique.
For textures. How does that work?
So let's say you find an awesome photo of a rock wall.
Okay.
You can use that as a starting point for your texture.
Oh, wow.
You can edit it, make it seamless, adjust the colors.
So it fits with your game's aesthetic.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
It's like borrowing inspiration from the real world
I like it.
to build your virtual one.
Okay, so now we've got these awesome textured walls,
Looking good.
but it's kind of dark in here.
It's a dungeon. It's supposed to be dark.
Right, but we need some lighting
Lighting is everything.
to set the mood.
Exactly. You want it to be spooky, but not too dark.
Right, you don't want people to not be able to see.
Exactly. You want to strike that balance.
Okay.
So the book dives into lighting design in Unity,
Okay.
showing you how to use different types of lights to create atmosphere, guide the player, highlight key areas.
It's amazing how much of a difference lighting can make.
It's huge.
It can make or break a scene.
Absolutely.
It's like if you walk into a room and the lighting's all wrong, it just feels off.
Exactly. It can make you feel uneasy.
Right, or like you're in the wrong place.
Exactly. Lighting is subliminal.
It's powerful.
Very powerful.
Wow, and Unity has all these tools built in.
Oh, yeah. Unity's got you covered.
That's awesome.
And the book shows you how to use them effectively.
Okay, good.
And it also talks about optimization, because too many lights can slow your game down.
Right, because each light is like a little mini computer program, right?
Exactly. They take up processing power.
So you got to be strategic with your lighting.
Exactly. You want spooky, but not at the cost of performance.
Right, nobody wants a laggy game.
Nobody.
It's the worst.
No worse.
Okay, so then it mentions something called occlusion culling.
Yes. Another one of those fancy terms.
Right, what is that?
Okay, imagine a big pile of laundry.
Okay, I'm imagining it.
You only really see the clothes on top, right?
Right.
Occlusion culling is kind of like that.
Okay.
It's a way to improve performance by hiding objects that the player can't see.
Okay.
So if a rock is behind a wall,
Right.
the game won't waste resources trying to render it.
Oh, that's so smart.
It's like the game is saying, why waste time on something you can't even see?
Right, it's like those old school stage sets.
Exactly.
Where they only build what the audience can see.
Precisely. It's all about efficiency.
Okay, so occlusion culling is a good thing.
It's a very good thing.
It makes our game run faster.
Exactly.
We like that.
We do.
Okay, so we've got our levels, we've got our lighting.
We're getting there.
We need some bad guys.
The dungeon's feeling a little empty.
Right. Where are the monsters?
We need some creepy crawlies.
This is where it gets exciting.
It does.
Because now we're talking about making those characters actually move around.
Exactly. Character animation within Unity.
So we're taking those animated characters we made in Blender.
Yeah. Bringing them into Unity.
And letting them loose.
And then using code to control their movements.
It's all coming together.
I love it.
And to make sure your game logic is sound.
Right.
The book spends a good chunk of time on game structure design.
Game structure, right?
It all starts with flowcharts.
Okay, flowchart.
These are visual diagrams that map out the flow of your game.
From beginning to end.
Exactly. So you're defining what happens when the player hits start.
Okay.
How they move through the levels.
Okay.
And ultimately how the game ends.
That's like a roadmap for your game.
Exactly.
I like it.
It helps you visualize the entire experience.
Okay, and then once we have that roadmap, it's time to write some code.
Time to bring it all to life.
C#
as your friend.
Even if we don't know it that well.
The book makes it easy to understand.
Right.
It breaks everything down into manageable chunks.
Okay, so we can use C# to control how our character moves.
Absolutely.
How the camera follows them.
Camera control is crucial. Right, you don't want the camera to be all over the place.
Nobody wants a nauseating gaming experience.
Exactly.
So the book shows you how to make the camera follow your character smoothly.
Okay.
And even how to prevent it from flipping upside down.
Which I've seen happen in games, and it's very disorienting.
It's the worst.
Okay, so we've got our character moving, we've got the camera behaving itself.
What about those enemies?
Right, they need to do something.
I need some enemy AI.
Okay, how do we make them smart?
Well, the book starts with the basics of AI.
Okay.
Using a technique called nav mesh.
Nav mesh.
Basically, it's creating a map
Okay.
of all the walkable surfaces in your game world.
So it's like giving your enemies a set of blueprints.
Exactly.
So they know where they can and can't go.
Precisely. So no more enemies getting stuck in walls.
Or falling off cliffs.
Unless you want them to.
Right, unless that's part of your evil plan.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got the nav mesh set up.
Yes.
How do we actually control how they behave?
That's where scripting comes in.
Okay, more code.
More code, but it's fun code.
Okay, good.
Because you get to be the puppet master.
I like it.
You decide how those enemies act.
Do we want them to chase the player?
You can do that.
Do we want them to patrol an area?
You can do that too.
Can they react to sounds?
Absolutely.
This is awesome.
The possibilities are pretty much endless.
So we can make them as simple or as complex as we want.
Exactly. It's all up to you.
Okay, so we've got our enemies behaving badly.
As they should.
But we need to up the stakes a little bit.
Okay, how so?
What about those classic RPG elements?
Ah, yes, the good stuff.
Right, like health points, mana, attack power.
All the things that make RPGs so addictive.
Exactly.
The book shows you how to add all of that.
That's awesome.
And even how to create in-game items.
Like health potions?
Health potions, mana potions, weapons.
So if my character finds a magical sword,
Yes.
I can write the code that makes that sword actually do something?
Absolutely, you can increase their attack power.
That's so cool.
Give them special abilities.
Wow, it's like we're making a real game here.
We are.
That's amazing.
And you can even make your enemies more challenging.
Okay, how do we do that?
Well, you can give them more health.
Okay.
Make them hit harder.
Okay.
Make them smarter.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you don't want them to just be mindless punching bags.
Right. We want a challenge.
Exactly.
But not too much of a challenge.
Right, you want to find that sweet spot.
Okay, so we've got challenging enemies.
Yeah.
We've got awesome items.
Yeah.
What about when our character inevitably dies?
Nobody likes to start over from scratch.
No, that's the worst.
So we need a save system.
Oh, yes. Saving graces.
Exactly. And Unity makes it surprisingly easy.
Really?
Oh yeah, the book walks you through it step by step.
So I can save my progress.
You can save your progress.
All my hard-earned items.
Everything.
That's a huge relief.
It's a game changer.
It is.
And it's easier than you might think.
That's awesome.
It's one of those things that seems daunting. But once you learn the basics, it's like, oh, that's it.
That's how I feel about a lot of this stuff.
It's true. Game development can seem intimidating.
Right, but when you break it down, it's like, okay, I can do this.
Exactly. It's all about taking it one step at a time.
I like it.
And that's what this book does so well.
It holds your hand.
It does, in the best way possible.
Okay, we've got our characters, we've got our environment, we've got our combat.
We're getting close.
That's missing.
I think it needs a little something extra.
Okay.
A little visual flair.
Ooh. Okay, like what?
Time to talk about particle systems.
Particle systems. Okay.
This is where things get really visually spectacular.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What can we do with these particle systems?
Oh, we can create all sorts of amazing visual effects.
Okay. Like what?
Everything from simple things like a burst of sparks
Okay.
when your character picks up an item,
Right.
to more complex things like atmospheric mist that adds to the mood.
Ooh, spooky mist. I like it.
Right.
What else can we do, fire?
Absolutely, we can create fire flickering torchlight.
Oh, that's cool.
All sorts of cool stuff.
So these particle systems, they're like little mini explosions of creativity.
Exactly. They're a way to add that extra layer of polish.
And make your game really stand out.
Precisely.
Okay, but particle systems aren't the only way to enhance the visuals, right?
Well, you're right. There's more.
Give me more.
Unity has built-in image effects.
Oh, cool.
You can apply these directly to your camera
Okay.
and give your game a whole new look.
Like Instagram filters for your game world?
Exactly.
I love it.
You can add bloom, blur, color grading.
It's like having a whole box of virtual crayons.
Precisely. You can color your game world however you like.
Okay, so we've got all these awesome effects.
Looking good.
But we got to make sure our game still runs smoothly.
Performance is key.
Right, we don't want to sacrifice performance for pretty graphics.
Nobody wants a slideshow.
So what do we do?
Luckily, Unity makes it easy to adjust your game's quality settings.
Oh.
You can find that perfect balance between visual fidelity and performance.
So you're saying we can have our cake and eat it too?
Exactly.
I like the sound of that.
You can choose different presets,
Okay.
like fantastic for high-end PCs
Okay.
or simple for mobile devices.
So no matter what you're playing on,
Everyone can enjoy the game.
that's awesome.
The book breaks down all the settings,
Okay.
so you understand how they impact performance.
Okay, we've covered so much.
We have.
We've built our world. We filled it with characters.
It's been quite a journey.
But there's one last thing, right?
The final piece of the puzzle.
How do we share this masterpiece?
It's time to unleash your creation upon the world.
Let's do it.
Thankfully, Unity makes this final step surprisingly painless.
Okay, good.
They have a whole chapter dedicated to this process.
Okay, I'm ready. Where do we start?
First things first, build settings.
Build settings, okay?
The book walks you through configuring these settings
Okay.
to create builds for different platforms.
So you're saying I could potentially see my game on Steam?
Absolutely.
On the App Store? On the Google Play Store?
It's possible.
Yeah.
You could even make it playable in a web browser.
That's incredible.
The book covers all those options and more.
This is amazing.
It's about giving you the power to share your game with the world.
That's what it's all about, right?
Exactly. Why keep it to yourself?
Let everyone enjoy it.
Spread the joy of gaming.
I love it.
And the book really makes it seem possible.
It does.
Like anyone can do this.
It's really remarkable
It is.
how accessible game development has become.
It's amazing.
Imagine someone listening right now who had an idea for a game a year ago.
Yeah.
They could be just a few steps away from actually making that happen.
That's the power of these tools and the knowledge in this book. That's the power of these tools and the knowledge in this book.
It is really mind-blowing how accessible game development has become these days.
It really is, yeah.
Like you were saying, imagine someone listening right now who had this idea for a game like a year ago.
Totally, yeah.
And they could be just a few steps away.
A couple clicks,
From seeing it come to life, that's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And what's really struck me during this whole deep dive
Yeah.
is how this book really emphasizes that you don't have to be,
Right.
a coding whiz or a master artist
You don't have to be an expert.
to create something amazing.
Right. You just have to have the passion and the drive.
The passion, the creativity,
And willingness to learn.
the willingness to
Even
experiment.
make mistakes.
Totally.
Because that's how you grow.
And that's how you learn, right?
Exactly. It's all part of the process.
It's all part of the process. I like it.
Embrace the mistakes.
Yes,
They're your friend.
they are.
In game dev and in life.
Okay, so this book gives you the tools, the knowledge,
It does.
but it also gives you something even more powerful.
What's that?
Confidence.
Yes. Confidence is key.
It is that feeling of, I can actually do this.
It's priceless.
It is priceless, especially when you're first starting out
Oh, absolutely.
and you feel like you don't know what you're doing, which is totally normal.
Everyone starts somewhere.
Right.
Even the pros were beginners once.
Exactly. They were all where we are right now.
Fumbling through code.
Yeah.
Making those happy little accidents.
It's all part of the journey.
It really is. It's a journey, not a race.
So for anyone listening who's ever thought about making their own game,
Yeah.
what would you say to them?
Just start, don't wait for the perfect moment or until you think you have all the skills.
Right.
Just dive in, pick a tool, any tool,
Okay.
learn the basics, and start playing around.
Experimenting, right?
Exactly, because that's where the real magic happens.
That's what this book encourages, right?
That's
like,
it.
Just take that first step.
However small it might seem.
It could lead to something amazing.
You never know.
Right, you could create the next indie hit.
Exactly. Or you might just discover a passion you never knew you had.
That's a good point.
And even if you don't become the next big thing,
Right.
the joy of creating something from scratch, of
Yeah.
seeing your vision come to life,
Right.
that's incredibly rewarding in itself.
That is a very good point. Well said.
Thank you.
So to kind of wrap things up here,
Yes.
if you are even remotely curious
Diff a little bit.
about game development,
Yeah.
This book is an incredible place to start.
It really is. It's a fantastic resource.
It's got practical advice. It's got tutorials.
Step by step, holding your hand.
It's got real-world examples.
You can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong. I like it. All right, well.
It's been a pleasure diving into this with you.
This has been awesome. I've learned so much.
Me too. Always learning.
And to all our listeners out there,
yes,
we can't wait to see
what
amazing worlds you create.
Go forth and create.